Today on the Sick Podcast, Carey Price speaks with members of the media, all of them in a Zoom setting for the first time in 7 months. Were his answers sufficient? Are we happy with what we heard? We'll also talk about Jeff Petrie, who clearly is unhappy here, and the transparency of Montreal Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes, who says he told Petrie, I know you're unhappy. I know your family's unhappy. I will try to move you, but the deal has to make sense for us. All of that coming up on the Sick Podcast.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. Brought to you by 8.6, Intense by Nature.
And joining me, my guest today from the Montreal Gazette and What the Puck, Brendan Kelly. What's going on?
Oh, not much, Tony. Life is good as always, living the life.
All right. I know that you were paying special attention on Sunday night at 6:15 p.m. when Montreal Canadiens goaltender Carey Price spoke with all members of the media, because Lost in the Shuffle was an interview that he had with Dave Stubbs of NHL.com back in mid-September. But as far as all members of the media were concerned, this was the first time the entire fan base had a chance to hear from Price in about 7 months. I know you were listening because I saw you writing about it on your social media, on your Twitter there. What did you think?
Well, I had been asking why was it that we hadn't heard from Carey Price for 7 months since the last game, that last night that they lost in the Stanley Cup final to the Tampa Bay Lightning. I thought it was outrageous. I thought it was really highly problematic. He's the face of the franchise. He is the most important player on the Montreal Canadiens. Checked himself into the substance abuse program of the NHL and the NHLPA. There was an injury, hadn't played a game all season. I felt he owed it to the fans to speak to them. Still don't understand why it took so long. But yeah, so I was happy he got out there. A couple of things I'd say right off the bat. What's up with 6:15 on a Sunday night in the middle of one of the biggest nights of the year for the NFL? Seemed like a very strange time to do it. Like they were kind of trying to bury the story in a way. Why wouldn't you do that on a Tuesday or a Wednesday in the middle of the day? So that was strange.
Because you just answered it. It was strategic timing.
It was. So they wanted to minimize the impact of the Carey Price thing. The other thing is, we all love Chantal Machabée. Great to see she's in charge of communications. Come on, man. The Facebook feed for that press conference, the biggest press conference in a year for the Montreal Canadiens, or whatever, one of the biggest ones of the year, because Kent Hughes was big too. No audio. I mean, come on. That was pretty bad. So to move on to the main thing, what did Carey Price say?
Well, I mean, that's not her fault, obviously. It was a technical issue. I mean, they didn't put it up on Facebook intentionally without volume.
Buck stops here, Tony. The boss is always the one who's to blame.
Mosi Tumo.
Yeah,
all right. Okay. Look, it was. Hold on a second. Why don't we say this? Why don't we credit Chantal for Carey Price speaking? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I agree with you. I thought it was unacceptable that the fan base, it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about the fans. They've been with Carey Price for the last 15 years through the highs and through the lows. And they, in the end, are responsible for paying his salary. And they deserve to hear from him, and they hadn't in a very, very long time. And I'm convinced that behind all of this, there had to be some Chantal Machabée in it who said, Carey, this team is so important to the fans. You are the franchise player here. They need to hear from you. Now, I understand you're probably not up to doing it, and I understand you're a few words.
Why are you not up to doing it? What is this garbage? I mean, come on, get out there.
You know he doesn't like to talk to the media. You know that.
Tough. Give your money back then. Give your salary back if you don't like it. Seriously, talk to the fans. But I'm 100% with you, Tony. I like Chantal, and I think that, look, she was on Tout le Monde en Parle, and Guy Lepage, the host, said, we can never get players on this show because they don't want to do it. And Chantal said, I want to change that. I want to get the players out there. We've got some great stories. We've got some great people. And I know Carey Price hates journalists. He hates talking to journalists. I hate journalists, and we're a miserable bunch of people, but it was his job to do it. I'm sure that whole event had Chantal Macabee's fingerprints all over it. She twisted his arm, and it was the right thing to do. Look, at the end of the day, Carey Price said absolutely nothing on Sunday night. It was a big non-event. He was quite well spoken. I mean, he was like not quite as laconic as he usually is.
He's always very well spoken and chooses his words.
No, he isn't.
And
no, it's often quite obnoxious. And
oh, really? You find?
Well, you know what? The story I always tell. Remember when they played the Winter Classic in Ottawa? It was an embarrassment. Remember that? I can't remember the score, but it seems to me it was 4-0. They played a terrible game, just one of a million terrible Habs games for the last 30 years. And it was humiliating. And it's a big deal, the Winter Classic. And they interviewed Carey after the game live on the broadcast. And because he is the most important player. And they say, so what do you think of how the game went? And he said, I had fun. And I can't even remember who was doing it. They said,
yeah.
I mean, you were humiliated out there. He said, I had a good time. I mean, he often has that kind of sort of, I don't give, you know, I don't.
Yeah, but hold on a second. I mean, we obviously, we know that's not true. I mean, anyone who plays any team sport wants to win and wants to win a championship. At the end of the day, Brendan, some people are better with some athletes are better with the media than others, right? Right? Yeah. Some people in media are actually better than others.
Right. Let's not mention any names, Tony, because I don't
want to mention any names. There are some that are the best at what they do.
The GOAT.
I would think so. Listen, we did find out, all kidding aside.
Carey hates talking to journalists. He was a bit better. He was actually well-spoken on Sunday night. But let's be I mean, the real story is there was no story. There was. Hold on a second. What was the news out of that press conference?
The fact that he told everyone he's still uncertain how his knee will react. He doesn't know if he's going to be able to play. Now, that is what I took out of that presser, because I didn't take out of the presser, I signed a no movement here and I don't want to move and I want to play with them for the Montreal Canadiens again. I want to finish my career here in Montreal. He had to say that. All right. There's no way he was not going to say that. But the fact that he left the door open to kind of like, I don't know how my knee's going to react. And we should think about Ben Bishop, who was a big goalie, and at around Carey Price's age, 34 years of age. He's 6'7", 215, Ben Bishop, 6'7", 220 maybe. Carey Price probably about 6'3", 210. Ben Bishop wasn't able to play anymore, and he had to retire. And look, I felt ever since there was a GM change here, especially, and they brought in Gorton and they brought in Hughes, and it looks like they're going rebuild. No, I feel really strongly that they're not going to keep a Carey Price who's going to be 35 in August, who makes $10.5 million a year and will be making that for many, many years to come. So I believe that they will either trade him, or he will either not play hockey again, or he'll come back to play hockey for a while and then not play hockey again, or it's going to be an LTIR situation. Like, all of a sudden for me, it's looking more and more like it could be an LTIR situation, not only for Weber, but for Price. There's a possibility he doesn't play again.
Quite possible. I mean, and we don't get any answers. And to be fair, obviously, Carey doesn't know. One thing I would say is, when are we going to start asking hard questions about the medical staff of the Montreal Canadiens? I mean, it's been years now that it's been murky as murkiest water possible, what's going on with these injuries. By all accounts, and my colleague Pat Hickey said that, and he knows quite a bit about knee injuries, torn meniscus is usually not a huge deal. And they said it's an 8 to 10 week recovery. And here we are 7 months later, And you know what the news was, and Chantal Machabée said that a couple of weeks before the press conference, was that we're essentially starting from ground zero in terms of rehabilitation, and we don't know where it's going. So what the heck is going on here? And also, like,
now, hold on a second. Don't be naive here. You know as well as I do. How can I say this without actually saying it? Well, I might as well just say it. That behind all of this, there's no urgency to bring guys back, right? They realize that they're the worst team in the National Hockey League. And although nobody likes losing, you might as well lose to give yourself the best chance at the best pick. Take a look at a bunch of players who have been out. It's not like any of them have been rushed back from the team. And it's not like any player wants to rush themselves back either, right? It's not like they're going to come back. We're going to try and make the playoffs here. It's not happening.
The only problem with that is, you know, it could well be the end of the Carey Price era in Montreal. You just said the same thing. And if they could trade Carey Price, that would be a great thing in my books. I think that drafting and building your team around Carey Price is potentially the worst idea that the Montreal Canadiens have had in 40 to 50 years. So to get him out of town, nothing against him personally, but the Carey Price experiment has not worked out. But if
they were 3 wins shy of it working out, but I will agree with you. Hold on a second. I will agree with you. It was not an idea that was sustainable.
It was a dumb. Can we put it a little more clearly? It was a dumb idea. They should have got a hot center and done something else. It did not work out. No one else builds around the goalie. It was a mistake. It was Bob Gainey's mistake, and it was perpetrated and further continued by all of the other general managers. It's been a disaster, and I don't want to go back down that rabbit hole, but we talked about that before. They weren't 3 games away from winning the Stanley Cup. They were never going to win the Stanley Cup. And the team that was built by Bergevin is a wreck of a team, as we see now. So
it was a team that was a 1-year all-in. That's what it was. It was 1 year all-in.
It was not going to win the Stanley Cup. I mean, anything's possible. I mean, I could also make the Canadiens lineup, but it's not that likely. But they got to trade Carey Price. It's going to be extremely difficult to do. It will be impossible to do if he doesn't play any hockey. And it's unclear if he's going to play hockey. And if he doesn't get back on the ice this year, no team will trade for him because they don't know if he's ever going to play hockey again. So he needs to get back between the pipes for the Montreal Canadiens, which is probably, I mean, who knows? Because there was very little information at that conference. And the other thing, too, obviously, whatever team's going to take him, people talking about Colorado, people talking about Edmonton, they're going to have to pick up, meaning the Canadien, at least half of his salary, one would think. So he's going to be very
I'm convinced Colorado and Edmonton will not pick up Carey Price.
I don't think anyone will pick him up, honestly.
You know, why would Edmonton pick up Carey Price when they can pick up Marc-Andre Fleury, who's got will have a couple of months left on his contract? That's number one. Number two, I'm not so sure that Carey Price becomes an upgrade on what Colorado have in goal. They got Darcy Kemper, and they got a pretty good goalie tandem as well with Francouz, and so I don't see it happening.
No, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But I would pick up on
he either gets traded in a 3-way deal or he becomes an LTIR, Brendan.
Right. No, good point. But I would pick up on another thing that you said. You said, and I know you're Mr. Rebuild, we're obviously in a rebuild. You know what? News is out. We're not in a rebuild. We're not. The Canadiens are not rebuilding.
How do you know that?
I just read that interview with Arpon Basu and Kent Hughes. He didn't sound at all like a guy in rebuild mode.
Kent doesn't want to use the word rebuild.
He's not going to sell off all his old players. That's what a rebuild is. He's not doing that.
Well, hold on a second. You can't get rid of everybody either, right? Because anyone who's made a living in hockey will tell you that it's important to insulate younger players with some older players who can be mentors to show them the way. So they're not going to get rid of every single older player they have.
I'm really glad the Habs have all these great mentors this year, like Jeff Petrie and Ben Sherratt, to show people what leadership is all about. That's been fantastic.
What I'm telling you is Price will probably be gone. Jeff Petrie is going to be gone for sure. Ben Sherratt will be gone. But it doesn't necessarily mean that this season Edmondson and Gallagher will be gone too. Maybe one will be gone next year. Maybe one will be gone the year after. That's all I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, and I think if you read closely the interview in the Athletic with Kent Hughes, he spoke. Arpin Basu spoke to him on Sunday. It looks like he's sort of going like he actually quite clearly says we can't do what they did in Arizona and what they did in Buffalo. So they're going to do. You know what's funny about it is they're not going to be as totally goofy as Marc Bergevin and sort of dream every year that you're going to hit the Stanley Cup, but they're going to do a sort of rebuild light. They're going to do something in the middle where they get rid of the old guys. Like the sooner they get Jeff Petrie off the team, obviously the better. They're going to trade Sherratt. They're going to pick up picks, and he also said we'd rather have young hockey players rather than picks, which was interesting.
All right,
so they want to be back. They don't want to tank next year.
So let's go to Jeff Petrie now, and a shout out to sportbuffshop.com. All of your officially licensed sports apparel and our sick merchandise. Pazzo! Use code 615 for 15% off on all of their items. By the way, pazzo is an Italian word for someone who's just got a screw loose, like someone that, like me. That's basically, and that's why I'm wearing the shirt. Okay, Jeff Petrie. Look, Brendan and I talked about this story already, but I had a coffee with someone very close to the situation a couple of days before Christmas. And within a minute,
who was that?
I can't tell you that. But within a minute of sitting down, I was told that Jeff Petrie's asked for a trade. And I said, when did that happen? And it was like 7 or 10 days before that. So I knew that Jeff Petrie asked for a trade in mid-December. I also knew that if I came out and said it, Petrie would say it wasn't true. The organization would say it wasn't true. So at that point, everyone would have believed them. So what I did instead was I came on and I guaranteed everyone that Jeff Petrie would not be a Montreal Canadian when next season started, meaning he'd get traded this season or he would get traded in the offseason. Now, Kent Hughes has opened up and he says, he talked to Petrie. He told him he understands that his family situation, his family is obviously not happy because they're separated right now. His wife and the kids are back in Michigan because they don't like what's going on in Quebec. That's had a toll on him. Having said that, let's not use this as an excuse. Before things got really bad in this province with restrictions and severe lockdowns and curfews and all that stuff, Jeff Petrie was not ready to start this season. He showed up to the season a man demoralized, still didn't get over the defeat last year of the Stanley Cup final, didn't get over the fact that Weber was unofficially retired and Danault moved on to Los Angeles and Edmondson was hurt and wasn't going to play and Price entered the players assistance program. So what do you make of the Jeff Petrie situation, who asked for a trade in mid-December, and here we are a couple of days into the month of February, still here?
You know what? I really like Kent Hughes' response to the Petrie situation, something that Marc Bergevin would have never done. Firstly, he was transparent. Talked to La Presse on Sunday and he said, listen, I met with Petrie during that road trip and I told him, as you mentioned, that I know you're unhappy. I know there's this family situation. I know you don't like the lockdown. You're an American. You don't like this kind of thing. So if I can make a deal that works for both sides, and that's the thing, is it works for both sides, works for the Canadian and the other team, then we will trade you. But until then, Jeff, you're a Montreal Canadian. And what I liked about that, Tony, is he said that publicly. So in other words, he read between the lines. What he's saying is, listen, Jeff, what you're doing right now is effing unacceptable. You're going out there and you're making it clear, as you did most notably when Samuel Montembeault got his head taken off by Cassian, that you don't care. And you know what? That's not the attitude that we have as a Montreal Canadien. And that's not the attitude I want to show to Nick Suzuki and to Caulfield and to Romanov, to tell them it's okay to not care when there's nothing on the line. Brendan Gallagher cares every night. To be fair, you know, it's interesting. Who cares every night when he's out there is Carey Price. Remember that incident? That's what I was thinking about, Tony. A couple of years ago, Palmieri from New Jersey rams into Carey Price. What did Carey do? He punched Palmieri as hard as he could with his blocker in the head. And who was standing right beside Palmieri picking his nose? Jeff Petrie. Jeff Petrie did nothing then. And that was like, he doesn't have the excuse it was a nothing season. And remember when they asked Carey after that game, they said, it's pretty unusual for goalies to punch a guy like that.
Yeah.
They said, why'd you do that? He said, you know what? I'm sick and tired of getting run. I'm sick and tired of this. I needed to take it into my own hands. So this is actually not even just this season. There has been a lack of leadership. You know, everyone talked about, oh, there's a new sheriff in town, Shea Weber. He was never the new sheriff in town. I'm not expecting him to fight, but no one protected Carey for all those years. And you know, the funny thing is, Carey Price's career might be over. We were just talking about that a couple of minutes ago. And if it's over, it might be because he's been run so many times by Palmieri, by Kreider.
Well, come on. Well, hold on a second. He wasn't run by Kreider. Kreider crashed the net.
He was
as
run.
He was, you know,
an accident.
Well, I don't think he held up in crashing the net, put it that way, but it was a player that was going to the net and crashed the net. And anyway, long story short,
these guys are the best skaters in the world. They're the best hockey players in the world. They know what they're doing. Like Cassian, do you think he hit Montembeault by accident?
No, he knew what he was doing.
Exactly, and so did Kreider. And you think?
Listen, I don't accept Jeff Petrie at the end of the game saying, when I take a look at it on the replay, I realize that maybe I should have went over and I should have told him that's not acceptable because I didn't quite see it happen at real time. He saw everything happen.
And not only that,
he saw everything happen.
And he says, Petrie says, I didn't see it. Well, you know what? That's even worse. If you didn't see it, you're standing in front of the net and your goalie gets run right in front of you. Where were you looking? Where were you looking? And you know what? Most of this season, Jeff Petrie's out there looking like he is looking up in the stands to see if his wife is there. I mean, it's outrageous.
Here's what I don't understand. I understand you're looking for the right time to trade a guy and you're not going to just give him away. I get that. I understand that benching a player can affect his trade value. I kind of understand that too. But at the same time, Jeff Petrie's been in the league for a very long time. Everyone knows it's just one bad season. His 4 seasons before this with the Canadiens were all very good and very consistent. I don't understand how Dominic Ducharme, after that happened with Montembeault getting steamrolled, how he just put Petrie back on the ice the next shift. I don't get that because if I'm a player on that bench, I'm looking and I'm saying, are you kidding me? So here we have a chance to defend one of our teammates. We're not going to do it. And what's the punishment? There's none. We continue to get a regular shift. I was disappointed by that.
Has Ducharme ever benched any of the veterans all year? I mean, I can't remember that ever happening. And you know what? So when they say...
I think there was a time with Armia, and last year I think there was a time with Lehkonen. But having said all that, and I know I have a feeling you and I are going to disagree here.
I disagree.
I'm willing to give Dominic Ducharme the benefit of the doubt in terms of I don't think he should lose his job this year. Now, if he does, I totally get it. They're the worst team in the entire National Hockey League. But I don't know of too many coaches that would be able to get this, to make this team. Yes, they'd probably be more competitive, but how much better could they be? Danault left, Tatar left, Stahl wasn't back, Perry left, Edmondson hasn't played a game, Byron just got back, Carey Price hasn't played a game, Weber's unofficially retired, Hoffman's been out with injury and back, Evans was out with injury and back, Gallagher was out with injury and back, Anderson was out with injury and back, Toffoli was out with injury and back, Dvorak was out with injury and back. I mean, the only one who hasn't got injured, Drouin was out with injury and back. The only one who hasn't been injured is Suzuki. And so I bring it up because a lot of people think it's the opportune time to make a coaching change. But I would ride out the rest of the season with Ducharme. I know it's not the popular thing to say, but I'd ride out the regular season with Ducharme and reevaluate things in the offseason.
Well, the thing about that, you make some good points, but, Dominic Ducharme, like we talk about that, the question of benching Petrie. So he's clearly lost the room, as they say in the business. And yes, he's got a terrible team. And the real culprit for this disaster of a season, to sound like a broken record, is Marc Bergevin and how he constructed it. At the same time, the coach has lost the room. He has. They don't care for whatever reason, and I don't like it. But the veterans have clearly sent the message, we don't like this guy. We don't like his message. We don't care what he says.
Either that or we just don't like losing and we've checked out, period.
Well, I mean, that's unacceptable. And you need to be able to say, you know what, I'm the coach, Jeff. You behave like that. va-t'en, get out of here. You got to be able to say that. And the other thing about Ducharme,
In the meantime, you take them out of the lineup, you send them to your fitness room.
correct.
You make them jump on the Matrix treadmill, matrixhomefitness.ca, the way I do. I don't know. I've gone from 5 kids to 3, and you haven't said anything, with my beautiful Matrix T75 treadmill with my XUR console 22-inch, and I can use all my social media apps. Bring it home. Discover a club quality workout in the comfort of your own home. Visit matrixhomefitness.ca. Jeff, go on the treadmill for a little bit, and you can get off when you're traded. How about
I would
that?
just end the Ducharme thing by saying that you could fire him or not fire him. It doesn't really matter. My good friend Richard Labbé from La Presse had a great line this week. He said, it's a bit like asking Picasso to do his great work with Crayolas. I mean, this is a crap team. There's no other way of mincing our words. But I would say, for all those people who defend Dominic Ducharme, I would just say there is no evidence, as in zero, as in nothing. There is no evidence that he's a good NHL coach. We don't really know if he's necessarily a terrible one, but there's no evidence he's a good one.
Well, this is what we know. They got to the Stanley Cup final one year, and they're going to finish last in the league the next year. That's it.
Yeah,
right?
Jury's in. Okay. So if you were decided to fire him and have Luke Richardson become the interim coach for the rest of the season,
they're not going to do that.
No,
because the same people that boycotted when Randy Cunneyworth was the coach are going to go back to the Bell Center and they're going to boycott again. You already gave them an Anglophone executive VP of hockey ops from Massachusetts and an Anglo-West Islander who moved to Boston over 30 years ago. Brendan, you want to give these people a heart attack or what?
No, you're right. Forget it. I take that back. I mean, I think Francois Legault would, I don't know what he would do.
And these people being our friends in the Francophone media and those who were boycotting. Now, for the most part, I got to tell you, I think the media has been really, really good because I expected that, after the Canadiens hired Jeff Gordon, that they would not have embraced the hiring of Kent Hughes. I would say that it's been really good. I'm really pleased.
Surprising.
There's probably going to be a very short leash, but I've been pleased with the way he's been welcomed.
No, you're right, and you mentioned it on air, and he wrote it in Le Journal. The most sovereignist of columnists, Réjean Tremblay, didn't have a problem with the language issue, and in general, it was a reasonable approach, which I think is a credit to the media here, that they didn't sort of go for the easy thing. I mean, of course, there were people on, knuckle dragging people in their boxer shorts in the basement on social media, angry because it was a guy named Kent Hughes. But in general, the mainstream media reaction on the Francophone side was very positive. And
that's my buddy, by the way, that you talked about. Réjean, c'est mon chum, see?
Mais oui, mais Réjean, I like Réjean too. I mean,
good friend of mine. We actually talk, I would say, at least once a week.
Yeah, I loved Lancé Compte, Scoop.
Lancé Compte was Pierre Lambert, Margagnon.
Mais oui, Le National.
Le National de Québec, yes.
Mais oui.
Jimmy! Show him what you can do. Show him what it means to be a winner. I love that. I love Lancé Compte. I'm going through all the reruns in my head now. In ending, the Canadiens have promised over the past couple of years to be more transparent. I love what I'm seeing from Gordon and Hughes in that respect thus far. And ever since Chantal has taken over with the injury reports as well. Can we agree on this? The transparency is better now than it has been in a very, very, very long time.
I think it's better. I don't think we're where we need to be yet, but it is getting a lot better. There's no question. Paul Wilson was the master of not being transparent. Even Donald Beauchamp, who I like personally, the whole organization, it's not even necessarily the PR people. It was always about clamping down on all information about injuries or whatever else. And I really get the sense from Chantal Machabée and what I've seen in the interviews with her, she really wants to push for something else. I hope that the most senior elements in the Canadiens organization, ultimately Jeff Molson, will agree with this, that they should be more open. But if they're going to start, like Carey Price, that's a good start. So number 2, bring us Shea Weber. He's the captain of the Canadiens. It's like, that's incredible. He's the captain of the Canadiens. Mark Bergevin said he might never play hockey again, and he's not said one word. I mean, he's the captain. There's no other captain. He's the captain, and he's.
I'd be willing to bet that Shea will speak, but I've been wrong before. Marinaro, tell all your friends about this podcast. We're making a lot of noise. More and more followers every day. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at The Sick Podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Sick Podcast. It's absolutely for free. And by the way, you can be notified on all social media platforms when we actually go live or when we upload a most recent episode. You'll be notified right away so you can watch it right away. It is presented by 8.6, Intense by Nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark. Hey, bye week for the Canadians. What do you think is the number one thing that is on Kent Hughes' notepad right now? Number one.
Jeff Petrie. And moving the players in general. He's trade deadline's coming. He's got to move a lot of players. I don't think it's Carey Price, but it could be also Ben Sherrod. He's got some big decisions to make as to who stays and who goes. And that's right now. These trades could happen anytime.
Wouldn't it be something if they moved Petrie to another team in Canada?
I'd love it.
On that note, leave him alone, poor guy. He wants to go to the States, let him go.
Yes, Jeff Petrie.
It's The Sick Podcast. He's Brendan Kelly. I'm Marinaro. Till next time. Ciao for now.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by 8.6, Intense by Nature.